In English poetry, the mermaid has been the subject of many charming verses, and Shakespeare alludes to it in his plays no less than 6 times. The headquarters of these daughters of the sea in England, or of the belief in their existence, are in Cornwall. There, the fisherman, many a time and oft, beneath the silver moon, has heard, afar, the mermaids sing, and has listened, so they say, to the mermaid's sweet, sea-soothing lay, that charmed the dancing waves to sleep. Mr. Robert Hunt, FRS, in his collection of the traditions and superstitions of old Cornwall, records several curious legends of the Mermaids and Merrymen, the local name for mermaids, which he had gathered from the fisherfolk and peasants in different parts of that county. In a pleasant article in All the Year Round, 1865, a Cornish vicar mentions some of the superstitions of the people in his neighborhood and the perplexing questions they occasionally put to him. One of his parishioners, an old man named Anthony Cleverton, popularly known as Uncle Tony, having been the 7th son of his parents in direct succession, was looked upon, in consequence, as a soothsayer. This ancient augur confided to his pastor many highly efficacious charms and formularies, and in return sought information from him on other subjects. One day, he puzzled the parson with a question that so well illustrates the local ideas concerning mermaids, and the sequel of which is, moreover, so humorously related by the vicar, that I venture to quote his own words as follows. Uncle Tony said to me, "Sir, there is one thing I want to ask you, if I may be so free, and it is this. Why should a mermaid, that will ride about upon the waters in such terrible storms, and toss from sea to sea in such ruckles as there be upon the coast, why should she never lose her looking-glass and comb?" "Well, I suppose," said I, "that if there are such creatures, Tony, they must wear their looking-glasses and combs fastened on somehow, like fins to a fish." "See," said Tony, chuckling with delight, "what a thing it is to know the scriptures, like your reverence. I should never have found it out. But there's another point, sir, I should like to know, if you please. I've been bothered about it in my mind hundreds of times. Here be I, that have gone up and down Hollycombe cliffs and streams 50 years come next Candlemas, and I've gone and watched the water by moonlight and sunlight, days and nights, on purpose, in rough weather and smooth, even Sundays too, saving your presence, and my sight is good as most men's, and yet I never could come to see a mermaid in all my life. How's that, sir?" "Are you sure, Tony," I rejoined, "that there are such things in existence at all?" "Oh, sir, my old father's seen her twice. He was out one night for wreck. My father watched the coast, like most of the old people formerly, and it came to pass that he was down at the duck pool on the sand at low water tide, and all to once he heard music in the sea. Well, he crept on behind a rock, like a coast guardsman watching a boat, and got very near the music, and there was the mermaid, very plain to be seen, swimming about upon the waves like a woman bathing, and singing away. But my father said it was very sad and solemn to hear, more like the tune of a funeral hymn than a Christmas carol, by far, but it was so sweet that it was as much as he could do to hold back from plunging into the tide after her. And he an old man of 67, with a wife and a house full of children at home. The second time was down here by Hollycombe Pits. He had been looking out for spars. There was a ship breaking up in the channel, and he saw someone move just at half-tide mark. So he went on very softly, step by step, till he got nigh the place, and there was the mermaid, sitting on a rock, the beautifulest mermaid that I could behold, and she was twisting about her long hair and dressing it, just like one of our girls getting ready for her sweetheart on the Sabbath day. The old man made sure he should grip hold of her before ever she found him out, and he had got so near that a couple of paces more, and he would have caught her by the hair, as sure as tithe or tax, when, lo and behold, she looked back and glimpsed him. So, in one moment, she dived head foremost off the rock, and then tumbled herself topsy-turvy about in the water, and cast a look at my poor father, and grinned like a seal. And a seal it probably was that Tony's poor father saw. What, then, are these mermaids and mermen, a belief in whose existence has prevailed in all ages and among all nations of the earth? Have they, really, some of the parts and proportions of man? Or do they belong to another order of mammals on which credulity and inaccurate observation have bestowed a false character? Mr. Swainson, a naturalist of deserved eminence, has maintained, on purely scientific grounds, that there must exist a marine animal uniting the general form of a fish with that of a man. That, by the laws of nature, the natatorial type of the quadrumana is most assuredly wanting, and that, apart from man, a being connecting the seals with the monkeys is required to complete the circle of quadrumanous animals. Mr. Goss argues that all the characters which Mr. Swainson selects as marking the natatorial type of animals belong to man, and that he, being in his savage state a great swimmer, is the true aquatic primate Mr. Swainson regards as absent. Mr. Goss admits, however, that nature has an odd way of mocking at our impossibilities, and that it may be that green-haired maidens with oary tails lurk in the ocean caves and keep mirrors and combs upon their rocky shelves. The conclusion he arrives at is that the combined evidence induces a strong suspicion that the northern seas may hold forms of life as yet uncatalogued by science. That there are animals in the northern and other seas with which we are unacquainted is more than probable. Discoveries of animals of new species are constantly being made, especially in the deep sea. But I venture to think that the production of an animal at present unknown is quite unnecessary to account for the supposed appearances of mermaids. We have, in the form and habits of the Phocidae, or earless seals, a sufficient interpretation of almost every incident of the kind that has occurred north of the equator. For those in which protuberant mammae are described, we must presently seek another explanation. The round, plump, expressive face of a seal, the beautiful limpid eyes, the hand-like forepaws, the sleek body tapering towards the flattened hind fins, directed backwards and spread out in the form of a broad fin like the tail of a fish, might well give the idea of an animal having the anterior part of its body human and the posterior half piscine. In the habits of the seals also, we may trace those of the supposed mermaid, and the more easily, the better we are acquainted with them. All seals are fond of leaving the water frequently. They always select the flattest and most shelving rocks that have been covered at high tide and prefer those separated from the mainland. They generally go ashore at half tide and invariably lie with their heads towards the water, seldom more than a yard or two from it. There they will often remain, if undisturbed, for 6 hours, that is, until the returning tide floats them off the rock. As for the sweet melody, so melting soft, that must depend much on the ear and musical taste of the listener. I have never heard a seal utter any vocal sounds but a porcine grunt, a plaintive moan, and a pitiful whine. But another habit of the seals has probably, more than anything else, caused them to be mistaken for semi-human beings, namely, that of poising themselves upright in the water with the head and the upper third part of the body above the surface. One calm, sunny morning in August 1881, a fine schooner yacht, on board of which I was a guest, was slowly gliding out of the mouth of the River Moss, past the Hook of Holland, into the North Sea, when a seal rose just ahead of us and assumed the attitude above described. It waited while we passed it, inspecting us apparently with the greatest interest, then dived, swam in the direction in which we were sailing, so as to intercept our course, and came up again, sitting upright as before. This it repeated 3 times. So easily might it have been taken for a mermaid, that one of the party, who was called on deck to see it, thought at first that it was a boy who had swum out to meet us.